Welcome to the Defense and Aerospace Report. I'm Vagan Radian here at Al Udeid Air Base, which is home to the command that oversees all combat air operations over the Middle East, over Afghanistan, as well as down in the Horn of Africa, where aircraft like this B-52H Stratofortress bomber are in use every day. We just saw one take off for a mission to support operations over Iraq. While we've been here primarily to cover the Doha International Maritime Defense Exhibition and Conference, the DIMDEX Conference, and our coverage here has been sponsored by DIMDEX 2018. But while we've been here in Qatar, some of our team have been in Biloxi, Mississippi to cover the International Homeland Defense and Security Summit in Biloxi, Mississippi. There we caught up with the Coast Guard, the Commandant of the United States Coast Guard, Admiral Paul Zukunft, and we asked him what some of the key takeaways are from this conference.
Here we are in Mississippi. We've got Israel here, we've got Taiwan is here, Korea, we've got the Embassy of India represented. And so if you really look at Israel, it is almost the bullseye if you look at for terrorist activities. What do we learn from them? So it's great that we have, this is not just a homeland security, it's really a global approach to homeland security as well. Great initiative by the state of Mississippi and certainly Governor Bryant to make this a reality. We've been working the recapitalization of our icebreaking fleet for going on 2 decades now. We have finally reached a tipping point where it's time to start building new ships, recapitalize this fleet. So the RFP, request for proposal, that went out a week ago Friday. We have 5 competitors. The 19 budget's still not finalized, but we are very optimistic that this isn't just a request. The funding will be there to match, and we need the first ship in the water by 2023. Emphasis on first ship. We need a fleet. We've done our homework, we've done multiple studies, and at the end of the day, it's a fleet of 6. Right now, it's not an area of concern for us. I mean, as we're building new ships, what we look at, does it meet our requirements, and does it meet the affordability threshold? And so regardless of the tariffs, as long as we look at this RFP for Icebreakers, if it meets requirements, and then it will be competed on affordability and requirements, and we will look for that affordability sweet spot when we look to award final design and then start building this next fleet. Well, we look at the East Coast, the West Coast, the Gulf Coast. The Arctic really is our 4th coast. What happens in the Arctic doesn't happen in isolation either. Some of that is more climate related. But as we look at an ocean that is literally opening up, how do we fill this vacuum? Do we immediately militarize it? But what's at stake initially? Safety of life at sea. Vitally rich resources below that water and below the seafloor as well. Oil, gas, rich minerals. We're seeing Russia militarizing the Arctic. To what end state are they doing? Russia declaring a good part of the Arctic Ocean that has not been resolved. There are certain protocols that go with it. The United States has gone through these protocols and has mapped out an area the size of the state of Texas, but we are not signatory to the Law of the Sea Convention. We have not ratified. So we don't have a mechanism to lay formal claim. And we do see China operating in this extended continental shelf of the United States. To what end state? Is this part of the Silk Road that continues through the Arctic as well? Right now we're looking at recapitalizing our entire fleet. We're well on our way with the National Security Cutter. The next ship down in size is the Offshore Patrol Cutter out of Eastern Shipbuilding Group. That first ship will hit the water in 2021. We've got the request for proposal out for Icebreakers. We're well on our way to building out a fleet of 58 patrol boats, 154-foot ships, very capable. And then an inland fleet of construction tenders. Some of these are over 60 years old. They were designed at a time where we did not have mixed gender crews, so we can only send men on these ships right now. They're the ones that enable these waterways that generate that $4.6 trillion. Small investment, huge return. We're investing in cyber, we're investing in unmanned aerial systems, but we're doing all of that without sacrificing our workforce. It's one thing if you're investing in capital, but you can't do it at the expense of your human capital. It's important that we don't draw up one and then draw down the other. And many times when you modernize, you do it at the expense of force strength. We are not drawing down force strength, we're growing that as well. We're working with U.S. Pacific Command at Camp Smith in Honolulu. They are actually the supported commander, so they're looking at how do we use these national security cutters as instruments of a military service but also diplomatically as well. The Coast Guard has long-standing relationships with the Coast Guards in the East and South China Sea. Vietnam actually operates former U.S. Coast Guard cutters. Vietnam operates former Coast Guard cutters. We have long-standing relationships with Japan Coast Guard. We have long-standing relationships with China Coast Guard. So can we use the Coast Guard as a unique niche other than using Navy ships as we try to leverage a diplomatic approach to some of the tensions that exist in that region right now. We have ships deployed right now doing counter-drug operations with small ship-based unmanned aerial systems. And so we're using those to stealthily track shipments of drugs before we would launch a very overt helicopter that makes a lot of noise. And if you use it as a hunting dog that spooks the quail, well, now we're sneaking up on them undetected. And in fact, the first indication is when these crews, these smugglers stop and rest, it's not uncommon where we provide wake-up service.